Welcome back to the Suburban Chateau. On the move again. Here I am with Steve. He's driving, and we're on our way to the Horseshoe Curve, World Famous Horseshoe Curve, an important part of our railroading history and, of course, the history of America in terms of all kinds of railroad traffic. So we're really excited, and we're lucky that also the Horseshoe Curve is right in our own backyard, only a few minutes from the house. And just excited to show you the world famous Horseshoe Curve. And of course, we are right at the peak of the beautiful fall season. So we're gonna see some great leaves as well. Now, I've been to the Horseshoe Curve many times since we live so close, but I'll never forget one of the most prominent memories I have of the Horseshoe Curve came when I was in college. And my dad drove me up this very road to go to the Horseshoe Curve and visit. I had taken a course in college as part of my curriculum in Pennsylvania geography, and we were to research two counties from Pennsylvania. Of course, our home county, for me, that would have been Indiana, and then I selected Blair County to research as well. And my dad brought me up to see the Horseshoe Curve in close in person, and I'll never forget going up that road with my dad for the first time. And I just was so blown away by the size of that mountain and the feat of engineering and building that entire structure. And it always struck me as it must have been an amazing feat to build that. I also happen to have a rich historical connection to the railroad. My grandfather on my mother's side was a conductor. He worked for the Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh Company that was later purchased by Baltimore and Ohio, or the B&O. After being a freight conductor, he was then assigned the job as a passenger conductor of the Flyer, which originated in Buffalo and traveled to Pittsburgh and back each day. In addition, my husband Steve happens to be a machinist for Norfolk Southern and has worked his whole career in railroading as well. So we have a pretty strong tie to the railroad. On this particular day, we knew we wanted to get to the Horseshoe Curve right around 10 a.m. when the visitor center opened up, but I had forgotten that the Amtrak train does pass by there just a little before 10 a.m. And we did get a glimpse of the passenger train rounding the Horseshoe Curve, so that was pretty exciting. And the daughters and I have ridden on that train before, but it's always super exciting to ride on the train. And I'll see if I can find I think I have some footage of Sarah and I going around the Horseshoe Curve about a year ago. As you enter the gift shop of the Horseshoe Curve, you'll see all types of train memorabilia and books and t-shirts and coffee mugs, and you can also purchase your ticket to go into the Horseshoe Curve. Currently, it costs $5 for adults to go into the visitor center and, of course, go up to the top of the Horseshoe Curve. One of the things I found in the gift shop that I sort of thought was really cool were these sweatshirts, and of course they have the Conrail logo, and Conrail owned the Horseshoe Curve prior to Norfolk Southern's acquisition. Once you leave the gift shop, you walk outside again into the secondary part of the visitor center. Now here they have all types of historic memorabilia concerning the curve. And here's Steve as we enter the visitor center. One of the first things I saw that I thought was very interesting was some of the World War II memorabilia, and they had some papers that talked about the sabotage plot. Of course, that plot never happened, and they caught the folks that were trying to do that. And then, of course, this green sign is what I remember every time I came to the Horseshoe Curve, the world famous Horseshoe Curve, and then that old green sign. And I remember seeing that every time I came to visit the Horseshoe Curve before it was renovated in the 1990s. And you all know that anytime we see a typewriter, we have to feature it here on the Suburban Chateau. We saw a couple of great oldies. This Underwood, a little hard to see through the glass, but some really beautiful old typewriters. And there are all kinds of models and model trains in the visitor center as well. And they also feature some of the unique things that Blair County has to offer. The Benzel's pretzels. Here's a horseshoe curve, our baseball team, jersey, and just a couple of little things that when you think of our area, you think of those. The Horseshoe Curve was an engineering feat opened in 1854 to train traffic to reduce the westbound grade to the summit of the Allegheny Mountains. It would replace the Allegheny Portage Railroad that had connected Pittsburgh and Harrisburg through the canal system. Engineers planned to fill in two ravines that were split by a mountain as they began work in 1850 on the curve. They had no heavy machinery. They only used picks, shovels, and horses, and of course, manpower. The 31-mile line between Altoona and Johnstown that included the Horseshoe Curve opened on February 15th in 1854. The total cost was about $2.5 million or $80,000 per mile. In 1879, the rest of the mountain that was inside of the curve was leveled out to allow the construction of a park and observation area, the first ever built for viewing trains. When the curve was first built, there were only two tracks. There was a third track added in 1898. There are water reservoirs also at the Horseshoe Curve site below the curve, and the first reservoir was opened up in 1887, and then the road to the Horseshoe Curve was macadamied in 1932, and finally a gift shop was added in 1940. During World War II, the Horseshoe Curve became an important part of carrying the goods that were needed for the Allied war effort. And the curve was constantly under armed guard. And in fact, they uncovered a plot by the German military intelligence to sabotage the Horseshoe Curve. And they did stop that plot from happening, but it was a place that was incredibly important during that time, especially for the freight traffic. In 1966, the Horseshoe Curve became a National Historic Landmark. And in June of 1990, the park at Horseshoe Curve went under a $5.8 million renovation. In 1992, it reopened, and I remember being there on opening day with a new visitor center. There is also a funicular train that can take you from the parking lot to the top of the curve, which saves people walking up many, many steps to get there. But it's a really interesting part of that visitor center. And the curve today remains an important and active part of Norfolk Southern and their Pittsburgh line. And there's approximately 51 trains daily that round the Horseshoe Curve. Now, I've been very fortunate over the years to watch the trains round the curve at the top of the Horseshoe Curve. Sometimes I've seen multiple trains crossing at the same time, and that is very exciting. But today's train I thought was very interesting because I was able to see a very long train round the curve. And at one point, we could see both sides of the curve filled up with the train, and it was encompassing the entire track of the Horseshoe Curve. So I thought that was a pretty interesting part of today's trip. Here's a last look at the reservoir at the base of the Horseshoe Curve as we get ready to descend from the observation deck. And I'd just like to thank you for joining me on today's episode of the Suburban Chateau. I hope over the last 2 weeks you've learned a little bit about Pennsylvania history, a little bit about railroading history and transportation history, and I hope you come back and join us soon on the Suburban Chateau.